So I have a bit of a nostalgic delight for us to check out here today. This is my Banjo-Kazooie fan fiction from 1998. I can't say exactly whether I was at the tail end of 12 years old or just 13 years old when this was written, because Banjo-Kazooie came out I think around June of 1998, so I would have turned 13 in August of 1998, so can't say exactly whether I wrote this in July or sometime later in 1998. I can say for sure it was within 1998, certainly not after that, because the What's New section on this website was last updated in December of 98. Anyway, but first I should mention this website is not my website. This is the Gobi's, just called Koopa 55's Gobi page. This was a Banjo-Kazooie fan page created by someone I knew from Nintendo.com's Insider forums in 98. Koopa 55, obviously. Let's see. Welcome to Koopa 55's Gobi page. This page is dedicated entirely to Gobi, my favorite character in N64's Banjo-Kazooie. You can see there we have a picture of Gobi the camel, who, for those who haven't played Banjo-Kazooie, you encounter him on occasions throughout the game. He's sort of in the frenemy status. He technically falls under an ally. The villain of the game, Gruntilda, is also his enemy, but he also dislikes Banjo and Kazooie because you keep ground pounding the hump on his back to make him spray water to achieve various objectives throughout the game. So he also happens to he dislikes Gruntilda, the villain, but he's not a fan of Banjo and Kazooie either. He also dislikes them. But anyway, so this website, interestingly enough, see, I'm someone who spent a lot of time creating GeoCities pages dedicated to video games back in the late 90s, and in future vlogs, I'd like to maybe examine those as well. Take a look at some of my old websites, but the thing is that my websites were on GeoCities, so you can access fragments of them still on the internet, but you have to use the the Wayback Machine, Internet Archive, that kind of stuff. Whereas this website, interestingly, and it's still fully online. You do not have to use any kind of backups, any kind of Internet Archive, Waybacks machines, nothing like that. It's I'll throw up the little link to it down in the description if anyone wants to check it out for whatever reason, but it's just koopa55.tripod.com/Gobi, Gobi capitalized Gobi. And that's interesting because GeoCities is all down, but I guess I made the wrong call back in the 90s putting my stuff on GeoCities, because, yeah, it looks like tripod.com websites are still fully accessible. You can still, just never went offline. And we're a quarter of a century later, and this is dusty old internet history, and it is still there, fully available to look at, so that's pretty interesting. I won't make this video about this whole website, because like I said, it's not my website. Someone else made it. Someone I knew from Nintendo.com forums. My Gobi stories, let's see, Gobi's Valley. It's kind of like a little fan fiction where every paragraph is apparently on a new page. Gobi Story 2, Click Cluck Woods. There's also a Choose Your Own Adventure story here, and I believe the person who made the website, Koopa55, drew all these pictures himself. As you can see from these clicked links, I was already browsing around this website, but yeah, I don't want to look too deep into that. Create a story. Here's what we want to look at. Click on the picture below, and here you can see create a story. If you would like to write your own Gobi story and have it posted on the site, email it to me along with your name. Screen names will work at koopa55@hotmail.com. I would be surprised if there's still this person's email address 24 years later, and I'll put it in. Be sure to check back soon. I can get new stories at any time. Warning, if your story contains foul language, overdone violence, or is just plain sick, I'll delete it. So, George R.R. Martin, keep your Gobi fan fiction to yourself. This is an interesting sort of thing that a lot of websites try to do back in this day, is be the fan fiction hub, the fan fiction library, where you send your stories and they kind of curate it to display it. One of the sites I remember being the most successful about this, and I believe that I know for a fact this site is also still in line, is not updated for years and years, but they kept it in line. It was called Icy Brian's RPG page, and I have nostalgia for that one because they had an enormous fan fiction library of Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VII, I think like Suikoden, a few other RPGs. I remember being mostly like Chrono Trigger being the big centerpiece, but probably at least a dozen other games, and I believe they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories, so that was one of the websites I remember being really successful at the fanfiction curation scene. And, I didn't have that long or luxurious a fanfiction career. I don't believe I ever finished anything other than short stories. I made a couple of attempts at doing Pokemon novels that I'll show. I mean, when I say attempts, I mean like real beginner, not beginners in the writing quality. I mean, I got to the beginning of the story. I got through 1% of my novel outline, and I'll probably share those soon as I don't know. I might share them next week. I don't know. Who cares? But yeah, I never finished those. But I did finish a few short stories on the topics of Banjo-Kazooie and Pokemon and a few others. So anyway, I figured this is probably the first fanfiction I ever wrote here. At least the first one that ever ended up on the internet. Let's see, it's over here. It's me. My old online moniker on the Nintendo forums was Blue Moon 007. This introduces a dramatic one from my former enemy, is how this person makes this website describe me. I believe that just means we used to argue on the Nintendo Insider forums. I'd go on there when I was 12 years old, and I would be like, yeah, you like PlayStation, you're stupid, you're probably ugly. So I would just kind of troll people as a 12-year-old who didn't know what to do with my adolescent emotion a little bit. But I think within a matter of like weeks, back then it feels like a long time, because time is extended when you're younger, but probably it was like a few weeks of trolling. I got bored and just like, all right, let's be friends now. But yeah, so anyway, so Blue Moon 007, that's me. Here's my Gobi story from probably 1998. This might have been as soon as July, so I might have still been 12 when I wrote this, or maybe this was a few weeks after my 13th birthday I wrote this. Anyway, no title for the story. This story was written by Blue Moon 007. As Gobi strutted through the dried-out, prickly reeds toward the lava world, encrusted deep within the planet. Here's my little sidebar. At the end of Banjo-Kazooie, the initial game, Gobi heads off to... Banjo and Kazooie annoy him so many times that he announces he's going to the lava world, and he heads out at the end of the game, and you can't find him anymore in the game's world after that, so that's what this is a reference to. Also, I guess I should mention before I go too into this that Gruntilda, the villain, is a witch who only speaks in rhyme, so that's why I think that's all the build-up we need here. Okay. As Gobi strutted through the dried-out, prickly reeds toward the lava world, encrusted deep within the planet, the surges of heat that drifted toward him made him think that maybe he should have put up with Banjo and Kazooie back in the cool, click-clock wood. Using his tail, he swapped down some of his sweat-soaked fur and fanned himself. Suddenly, a green figure flashed before him, beat up and limping, because Banjo and Kazooie beat her at the end of the game. Gruntilda, Gobi gasped, no paragraph break, as there should be after the dialogue there. Bear and Bird were cruel to you. Would you like revenge? Well, I would too, the witch rhymed off. Gobi looked up and considered for a moment. No, Gobi said. They helped me in the desert. I owe them too much. Gobi said. Don't need Gobi said twice there, but okay. Gruntilda's eyes suddenly gleamed with a red, evil power, and Gobi felt fear. Grunty seemed to grow, and said, If you value your life, help me you will. If not, then you will be killed, she shrieked. Again, I don't need and said and shrieked both, but okay, anyway. Let's imagine a paragraph break there. No! Gobi stood up on his hind feet and whacked the witch continuously with his front feet. It's interesting to imagine a camel doing that. She yelped in pain. Ah! Gruntilda grabbed Gobi by his feet and picked him up. Foolish camel, you must know that in the lava pool you go. She hurled him out in a crater filled with thick, bubbling, steaming magma. Ack! Gobi snatched a piece of dried grass with his mouth and desperately tried to pull up. Grunty smirked slightly and threw a bolt of fire. It struck the grass and Gobi slipped further into the lava. Hot steam rising up smoked his fur and stung his eyes. It was a foolish mistake you made back there. Now you face the same fate as Bird and Bear. Maybe that rhyme doesn't quite work, does it? I would cut off the a foolish mistake you made back there. Now face the fate of Bird and Bear, maybe it should have been. Anyway, as Gobi frantically clawed his way to the top of the crater, the witch walked toward him, an evil grin on her ugly, battered face. As she approached the side of the gorge, she peered in. I think gorge is misspelled there. She flinched back as hot steam burned her eyes. As Gobi lost a foothold and pulled further toward the bubbling magma, Grunty pulled her foot back, kicking him sharply in the face. He slipped and pulled into the hole. "No!" the camel hollered. "I'm too young to die." As Grunty pointed at him and a glowing power appeared on the tip of her fingers, she smirked. "You won't live for Banjo-Tooie because—" She abruptly stopped. "Here comes Banjo and Kazooie." "Huh?" Gobi said. Kazooie's squawk echoed down the corridor. "Well, Banjo, I helped you find the lava world. You better be—" "Help!" Gobi cut off the red-crested Breagle. "Huh? What was that?" Banjo said as he ran faster down the corridor. "Gruntilda!" Kazooie squawked. "Gobi!" Banjo yelled at the same time. "Boy, am I glad to see—" "Ack!" Grunty shouted. "Me and the lava world you have found. Now I'll smack you in the ground." Grunty whirled and said, there's my overusing of the said words. The bolt of power she had intended for Gobi, should be she hurled at the two heroes misspelled, smacking Banjo in the chest. He flew backwards, hit the stone wall. Kazooie smacked her head and they were both rendered unconscious. Grunty smirked. "Down into the pit of death you'll go, and your final words will be—" "Your" is wrong there. Gobi reached up, locked his paw around the witch's ankle, and pulled himself up, pulling Grunty down into the abyss. "No!" the witch screamed, as she hurled down to the pit of lava. Gobi, watched, as she hit the lava. She let out noises, implying pain, and sunk. I like that she let out noises. Not she screamed in pain and sunk, but she let out noises, implying pain, and sunk. A smelly green cloud of steam rose up out the top of the volcano. "That's the end of Gruntilda," Gobi muttered. Banjo let out a small groan. "Banjo!" Gobi ran over to the honey bear. "Hey, hump boy, you killed the witch. Not bad for a camel," Kazooie shouted. "Gobi, you're a hero. You killed Gruntilda," Banjo said. Gobi smiled. "All I ask is that you never—" Banjo jumped above Gobi. "Sorry about this." Kazooie's sharp beak lanced out and slammed into the camel's back. "Ow!" he shouted and sprayed water across the surface of the lava, skimming a rock path. "Bye!" Banjo shouted as he hopped across the cooled lava rock, deeper into the lava world. "I'll get you someday!" Gobi shouted. The end. So, let's see. We got about 4 characters who appear here. What does this come out to? The equivalent of like 2 or maybe 3 pages of a paperback manuscript. Yeah, and I just straight up killed off the main villain of the franchise there. Just killed her off just like that. Pretty brutal. Did that mechanic of Gobi's water being used to form a rock path, did that actually happen in Banjo-Tooie a couple years later? I never beat Banjo-Tooie. I can't really say. I guess my Banjo-Kazooie fandom was intense, but it only lasted for the duration of one game, really, because I didn't play too deep into Banjo-Tooie, even though I do own a copy. Never played Banjo Pilot. Never played Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, so I did sample Banjo-Kazooie and Smash Bros. Ultimate. But yeah, anyway, so that is my Gobi fanfiction. Basically just kind of an action scene that results in Gruntilda's death in the magma. But yeah, that's all there is to it. But yeah, it's been fun to explore the world of... I want to explore... this introduces 2 different worlds I both want to explore as one of old-ass websites from the 90s. Both other people's that I might have nostalgia for, and also my own, which I want to show off, and the world of my old 90s fan fiction. And maybe I'll also explore a few other fan fictions that I do remember and have nostalgia for from that time. Particularly the Pokemon scene was probably the one that I read more than any other. That and Chrono Trigger. But yeah, that'll do it for now. Thanks for delving back into this literary masterpiece with me.